Henry James called Shakespeare the Divine William. The poet Heinrich Heine said, God naturally has a right to first place, but the second certainly belongs to Shakespeare. John Milton elevated the author to heights beyond the great pharaoh kings of Egypt when he asked, What need my Shakespeare for his honoured bones? The labour of an age in piled stones, or that his hallowed relics should be hid under a starry pointing pyramid. Divine, hallowed, second only to God? Surely such comparisons were made with a degree of poetic license, but the sheer impossibility of anyone in an ordinary state of human consciousness doing what you're about to see, knowing what you're about to be shown. It challenges us to consider whether he was indeed a god-like figure, a fully enlightened being. Starry pointing is interesting. The Great Pyramid at Giza does indeed have internal shafts that are pointing to very specific stars during the summer solstice, but no one knew that during the Renaissance. All pyramids are, by definition, pointed, except for one. So Milton can only be referring to the Great Pyramid, whose apex, according to all historical accounts, has always been missing. As you're about to see, Shakespeare is telling us something about the spiritual nature of this missing capstone by using the sonnets as a poetic metaphor for the Great Pyramid, and then he goes on to prove his knowledge mathematically through sacred geometry hidden in plain sight here in the sonnet's cover. It looks innocent enough, but it hides a mathematical masterpiece of incomparable genius. When you turn the page, the sonnets are arranged in numerical order, about 2.5 poems per page. But I'm not the first to suggest that there's a hidden pyramid structure based on the way the sequence is divided into sections. For instance, it's universally accepted that the first 17 are a self-contained set urging the poet's young friend to beget an heir, and they're called the Procreation Sonnets. The second section, known as the Fair Youth Sonnets, ends at number 125 and fits perfectly into a pyramid pattern, each level decreasing by 1. Number 126 is known as an envoy into the next section called the Dark Lady Sonnets. They end at number 152. And finally, the pyramid is capped off at its apex with a mystery. For number 153 is in fact half of a duplicate pair known as the Bath Sonnets. Essentially the same sonnet written twice, just differently. 153 says Cupid. 154, the little love god. Laid by his brand, laid by his side, his heart-inflaming brand, fell asleep, lying once asleep. And so on, they continue on through both sonnets, saying essentially the same story. Now, many scholars dismiss them because they seem to have no connection to the main 3 sections. They suggest they were just tacked on at the end by the publisher. Buy now, get 2 extra sonnets free. But in a way that would have made perfect sense. An accurate image of the Great Pyramid, sans apex. Even adding number 153 and having it say something poetically about the missing capstone would also have made sense, giving us a perfect triangular number, 17 by 17 by 17. But why go to all that trouble to create the perfect 153 pyramid, then ruin it with the strange anomaly of an extra sonnet, 154? Clearly, there has to be a deliberate and significant meaning to it. We just need to look deeper. Polonius says in Hamlet, I will find where truth is hid, though it were hid indeed within the centre. During the Renaissance, it was common for artists to place great emphasis on structure and put their most important message at the centre. In this case, that's Sonnet 113, and since a constantly recurring theme of the sonnets is the passage of time, it makes sense to ask, what is day 113 of the year? Well, let's have a look. It's April 23rd. Now, is there any importance to this date? Well, it's his birthday. It's also the most patriotic day in the English calendar, St. George's Day. So you'd expect the sonnet would say something commemorating England, right? Something along the lines of, "Once more unto the breach, dear friends. Cry God for Harry, England and St. George." But no, what he gives us is this: "Mine eye is in my mind, is partly blind, seems seeing, but effectually is out." This is the story of the Eye of Horus, the most important ancient Egyptian religious myth. Horus, son of Isis, the virgin queen of heaven, and of the resurrected Osiris, lord of the dead, who died at the hands of his jealous brother Set, who cut him to pieces and usurped the throne. Horus and Set eventually have at it. Well, excuse me, this is the story of Hamlet. Osiris, King Hamlet, bumped off by his brother Set. Claudius, uncle of Horus, Prince Hamlet, urged by his father's ghost to avenge the death. Well, in the Egyptian myth, Horus's right eye is the sun. The left is the moon. They represent the duality inherent in earthly vision, light, dark. The moon waxes and wanes, it's partly blind, seems seeing, but effectually is out. What we have here is the archetypal battle of life. Horus must overcome delusion in the form of Satan or Set, Maya, and regain his princely legacy, the throne of cosmic consciousness. Now, in the battle, Set plucks out Horus's left eye, the moon, and Isis comes to his rescue and restores his sight. This is spiritual metaphor on the deepest level. It symbolizes that delusion can take away even what little partial sight we have, whereas the divine mother of the universe can restore the whole eye, the all-seeing eye of God, the spiritual or third eye. Shakespeare even invents a special phrase used only in Hamlet that echoes exactly Sonnet 113. He says he thinks he sees his father in my mind's eye, Horatio. Every enlightened being, saint, yogic master, declares that this all-seeing third eye is the gateway to seeing the Father, and that to enter this mind's eye one must do battle with delusion. And that's what Horus does. He's victorious over Set. He conquers earthly duality by balancing the opposing forces of light and dark, sun and moon. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light. Shakespeare shows this poetically by giving us a duplicate pair of sonnets which are really one and uniting them into the perfect triangular pyramid formation. This is the Freemasonic symbolism of the missing capstone of the Great Pyramid, which becomes the all-seeing eye. Now, it's absolutely clear in 153, 154, he's describing the sun god, Ra, or in Roman Greek terms, Apollo, with holy fire of love, and love's fire, and the moon goddess, Diana, a maid of Diane's, nymphs that vowed chaste life. These are Diana's nymphs. They represent in Egypt the Isis, the virgin goddess. A general of hot desire was sleeping by a virgin hand, disarmed. Everywhere he's talking about this battle between light and darkness, heat and cold, water, the moon, heat, the sun. Love-kindling fire did quickly steep in a cold valley fountain, water, the moon. A dateless lively heat. A cool well by, from which love's fire took heat perpetual. Yeah, he's talking about the balancing of these forces, and he tells us this, by that I prove. This, one side, by that, the other. Love's fire heats water. Water cools not love. In reconciling the two opposite forces, they don't merely cancel each other out, resulting in neutrality. The fire, good, light, ultimately prevails. Water cools not love. It's a very uplifting message. The sonnets are clearly directing us to this story, the virgin birth of a God-enlightened being so central to both Christianity and ancient Egyptian Hermetic mythology. The author even declares in the last lines that he will prove it. This by that I prove. In fact, even in the two poems themselves, by adding up the characters and punctuation of 153, it's precisely 500. Adding up the characters and punctuation of 154, including the last finis, finished. 500. Perfect balance. He is meticulous about balancing this, but poetic proof, by its nature, is never conclusive. You cannot prove a masterpiece of art, and Shakespeare undoubtedly knows this, so he also gives us absolute proof in the form of a mathematical representation, sacred geometry. So brilliant is he that he even tells us poetically now he's going to confirm it mathematically. And he does it, of course, in Sonnet 17, the literal base of the sonnet's pyramid structure.